Hi there, welcome to the channel. My name is Kain, and in today's video I'm going to discuss how to decide what items and what rune setups you should go. However, this is not going to be your standard rune and build guide. I am not going to talk about every single item or every single rune. What I am going to do is I'm going to pick my main champion, Vladimir, and show you guys how I come up with my build paths and rune setups. I'm making this video to actually help you guys on the long term instead of giving you a temporary fix to your issues. Alright, let's get started. First of all, let me start with a banger. It doesn't really matter what rune setup or build you go. You do not climb because you have the perfect rune setup or build every single game. You climb because of your ability to carry games. Does your rune setup and build influence your skill to carry games or not? I would argue that it doesn't, or definitely not a lot. I'm not saying that knowing which rune setup and build you should go doesn't benefit you at all. As a matter of fact, it does. But I feel like choosing the right rune setup and build is very overrated. I've seen people literally run it down in my games because they selected the wrong rune setup, not knowing that having bad runes doesn't really matter that much. After all, the most important part is how you play the game, mechanically and macro-wise. The same issues arise with build paths. I feel like people like to make League more complicated than it actually is. Builds and runes are by far secondary to how you actually play the game. As long as you have some common sense of what runes you should pick or what build you should go, you should be fine. For example, if you're playing Vladimir, you should know that Vladimir is an AP champion, which means you're gonna need AP items. It can also be useful to know that Vladimir's biggest weakness is having high ability cooldowns. This means that you should know that building items with ability haste is necessary to having a good build on Vladimir. But that's it. That's legit all the knowledge you need. For example, I know that there are a lot of different AP mythic items with different strengths and weaknesses. But I think figuring out what mythic item you need on Vladimir is quite obvious and that you can decide that for yourself. Since Vladimir has no mana, it would be very inefficient to buy items that give you mana. So you're not gonna build items that give you mana. So that already eliminates Liandry's, Luden's Echo, Crown and Everfrost. That leaves you with Riftmaker, Night Harvester and Rocket Belt. Now, which item is the best out of these three? That depends. I currently like Night Harvester, but Rocket Belt and Riftmaker are also very viable. Just experiment with it and choose whatever you feel comfortable with. You have to stop copying everything from other players. Don't get me wrong, copying from, for example, challenger players is pretty good, but you have to start thinking for yourself as well. This is something nobody will tell you because they want you to watch their videos, but I think you should hear it. If you really want to improve in League and get some kind of game sense, you have to learn to think for yourself and don't always look everything up. The same goes for runes. I think everyone knows that something like Guardian on Vladimir is very bad because Guardian shields you and a teammate. But you're playing Vladimir mid, so you don't have teammates in your lane, which means that for a very big part of the game, that rune is gonna be useless on Vladimir. On supports, however, it's gonna be really good because they can shield their ADC. So for all those people asking me what rune setup should I go and when should I use different rune setups, my answer will always be the same. Specifically at this point in time, there are 4 major rune setups that are viable on Vladimir. I'm talking about Conqueror, Electrocute, Airy and Phase Rush. That's all you need to know. In what situation do you need Conqueror and in what situation do you need Phase Rush? It doesn't matter. Experiment with it. Try out every rune page and use whatever rune page you like the most. I got a lot of people in the comments saying Elite 500, which is the best Vladimir player out there, he's currently playing Conqueror Vladimir on the Korean server. Why is that? Is it viable? Is it optimal? And I say it doesn't matter. Do you know what Elite's response was to people asking him that? He said, going Conqueror gives me the most dopamine in my brain. It's simply the most fun rune setup for me at this point in time, so that's why I go it. He added to that it helps him fistfight people in the early laning phase because Korean players like to fight a lot in the early laning phase and he likes to fight back. Now this is the perfect example of going whatever rune setup you'd like and just go with the flow. In my latest Vladimir guide, I taught you guys to go Phase Rush because it feels really OP. I personally think that Phase Rush is the best rune on Vladimir and that it doesn't really make sense to go something else. But that doesn't mean that you guys have to do what I think. The way that I'm currently playing Vlad is just kinda broken, so that's why I wanted to share it with you guys, but you don't have to be so serious about everything and you can just learn to experiment with everything that I and other content creators say. After all, we're all just experimenting ourselves and having fun. You guys should definitely go ahead and do the same. As long as you have a somewhat viable rune setup and build, you're gonna be just fine. People tend to act like runes and builds are 90% of the reason why you are climbing and why you're not climbing, while in reality it might only influence 5% of your gameplay. Whether you go Electrocute Vladimir or Conqueror Vladimir, picking one rune setup over another is probably not going to influence your win rate at all. It's the playstyle that is combined with that rune setup that makes you climb. Runes and builds are not the reason that we climb, no. We pick runes and builds that make our playstyle easier and stronger so that we can climb more efficiently. Ultimately, it's our playstyle and our raw skills that make us climb. Runes and builds can only complement that. So it's very hard for me to tell people what rune setup they should go because that completely depends on their playstyle. If you're playing Vladimir and you're always fighting, then maybe you want to go Electrocute or Airy. But if you're someone who likes to focus on scaling, then you're probably gonna want to go something like Phase Rush instead of something aggressive like Electrocute. Only you can decide what rune setup and build complements your specific playstyle in the most optimal way. And I know people generally don't like guides like this, because in the end I haven't discussed all the different runes and builds. But I just think that's useless. You have eyes yourself. I assume that everyone who plays League can read the explanations about runes and items, so I find it a lot more useful if right now, at the end of this video, you understand how you can put builds and runes together and that you realize that you don't have to worry so much about it. If you want to worry about something, it should be about your playstyle. It should be about your farming, roaming, teamfighting, etc. That's a lot more important than your build and runes. Just try stuff out and have fun with it. Ultimately, this is really going to help you. Learning to experiment and limit test in League is what truly makes you an insanely good player. Unfortunately, a lot of content creators focus on getting views and getting people to continuously watch their videos instead of truly helping them. Hopefully, with this video I can break that pattern. I want to thank you for watching this video. If you have any video suggestions, leave them in the comments below and hopefully I'll catch you in my next video. Alright, see you in the next one. Bye.